All right, today we're diving deep into the dramatic and frankly, really surprising conclusion of one of the earliest accounts of Jesus' life, the Gospel of Mark.
So let's just get right to the heart of it, shall we? Mark's gospel builds Jesus up as this powerful, authoritative king, and yet the whole story is hurtling towards the most humiliating and powerless end you can imagine. How does that work? That paradox is the central mystery that these final chapters just force you to wrestle with.
You can basically split the Gospel of Mark, which is our source for this whole explainer, right down the middle. The first half is all about Jesus' ministry up in Galilee, but it's that second half, that fateful final journey to Jerusalem that we're focusing on, because this is where everything takes a very dark and decisive turn.
Okay, let's start with that journey. As Jesus heads toward Jerusalem for the last time, you see this huge disconnect. Jesus is completely clear-eyed. He knows he's walking toward his own death, but his followers, the people who should get it most, they seem to be on a completely different planet.
And, it's not like Jesus is being subtle about any of this. He gives his disciples this incredibly blunt, brutal prediction. There is zero ambiguity here. Betrayal, condemnation, execution, and then resurrection. He lays the whole thing out for them.
So, were they listening? Yeah, not so much. Right after Jesus lays out his own agonizing death, two of his closest friends, James and John, come up and ask this. They're still thinking about getting the best seats in the cabinet, about power and glory. The gap between what he's saying and what they're hearing is just staggering. And this is where Mark, the writer, does something really clever to hammer home this idea of spiritual blindness. He gives us this powerful contrast. You have the disciples who have perfect 20/20 vision but are completely blind to what Jesus is actually doing. And then you have this guy Bartimaeus who is literally blind, but he's the one who truly sees Jesus for who he is, calling him the Son of David, the true king. It's an incredible piece of storytelling.
So after this journey of total misunderstanding, Jesus finally rolls into Jerusalem. And he doesn't exactly tiptoe in. He makes a beeline for the absolute center of religious and economic power in the entire nation, the temple.
Our source material helps us map out this final, really intense week, day by day. It kicks off on Sunday with the triumphal entry. But the real action starts on Monday, when he directly challenges the temple system. And that's followed by a whole day of intense public debates on Tuesday, where everyone is questioning his authority. That first major event is the cleansing of the temple. The source points out three very specific things he does. He kicks out the merchants, he flips over the tables of the money changers, and he literally shuts down the area from being used as a commercial shortcut. I mean, this wasn't just some random outburst. This was a statement, a huge, disruptive, symbolic act. So what was this all about? Well, it was a prophetic judgment. And the source details exactly what Jesus was protesting against. First, the blatant financial exploitation being run by the high priestly families. Second, the general profiteering happening with things like temple taxes and the sale of sacrificial animals. And third, and this is a big one, they had turned the only part of the temple where non-Jews could pray, the court of the Gentiles, into a noisy, chaotic marketplace, effectively blocking it from being a house of prayer for all nations.
And yeah, that move in the temple, that basically signed his death warrant. It lit a fire under his enemies and set in motion that final tragic chain of events, the betrayal, the trial, and the execution, what we now call the Passion narrative.
So he gets arrested, and they haul him before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish High Council. And our source makes it super clear. This whole trial was a sham, totally illegal even by their own rules. It was held in secret, in the middle of the night. The assembly wasn't there to find the truth. They were actively looking for a reason to convict. They even tried to get false witnesses. And get this, even their stories didn't line up.
And this is where you see some really clever and frankly cynical political maneuvering. So the Sanhedrin convicts him on a religious charge, blasphemy. But they know that charge means absolutely nothing to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, who's the only one who can order an execution. So when they take Jesus to Pilate, they switch the charge to a political one, treason, claiming to be the king of the Jews, which is a direct threat to Caesar. Pilate just caves to the pressure, washes his hands of it, and Jesus is crucified. And Mark's account is, well, it's stark. It's brutal. It zeroes in on this one single haunting cry from the cross. It's a quote from Psalm 22, a cry of just absolute desolation, this profound feeling of being abandoned. But right at the moment he dies, Mark points out two incredible things happening at the exact same time. First, that enormous thick curtain in the temple that separates the holiest place from everyone else, it's torn in two, from top to bottom. The symbolism is huge. The way to God is now open to everybody. And second, a Roman centurion, a soldier, a Gentile who's overseeing the whole execution, looks up and says, "Surely this man was the Son of God."
Okay, so we've had the confrontation, the trial, the execution. You're probably expecting, a big triumphant resurrection scene to wrap things up, right? Well, hold on. This is where Mark's gospel takes a really, really weird turn.
And at first, it seems to be going exactly how you'd think. 3 of his women followers go to the tomb early on Sunday morning. They get there, the stone is rolled away, the tomb is empty, then a figure in white gives them the best news possible. He has risen. And he gives them a clear command. Go tell his disciples.
The stage is set. The good news is about to explode out into the world, but here it is, the actual final sentence of the original gospel. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Full stop. That's it. That's the end. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Hang on, my Bible has a whole other section after that. And you're not wrong, it probably does. But here's the thing our source material confirms. The oldest and best manuscripts that we have of the Gospel of Mark all end right there, at verse 8. They end with the women fleeing in fear and silence. Those longer endings you see, they were added by scribes hundreds of years later.
And so that's where Mark leaves us, just hanging. He gives us an empty tomb, he gives us a command to go and tell the good news, and then he gives us followers who are too terrified to say a word. It's an abrupt, shocking halt that forces you, the reader, to ask the final question: why? Why end the story of a triumphant king on this note of human failure and silence? It's a challenge that basically forces the reader to decide what they're going to do with the news they've just heard.